The new year just started and Putin is already making huge statements. For example, he said that Ukraine is not an enemy to Russia, and looks like that he is looking for a new target right now to invade. At the same time, Russia conveniently withdraws its air defense systems from a very important place, and in the end of the video I will give you the summary of 2023 and the goals for 2024, so stay tuned. But more about all of this in just a couple of minutes. What's up, investors? It's the Russian dude. Happy New Year, happy 2024, and guys, thank you so much for bringing our channel where it is right now. It is all thanks to you. I wish you all your wishes to come true, the most desired ones. I wish you health, luck, love, prosperity, and just that this year will be much better than the previous one, and hopefully Ukraine will win. And speaking about New Year wishes, let's talk about some ridiculous Russian propaganda, the first one in 2024, and it is nobody else but Battle Babushkas. This time they are writing a collective, a group letter along with some Battle Dedushkas to Ded Moroz, Father Frost or Santa Claus, commonly known in the West, and they are asking him, please, Santa Claus, make our Vladimir Putin win in 2024 presidential elections. We want nobody else except Putin. Ded Moroz even arrives in the middle of this video, and basically what he kinda hints them, and I mean at this point it is pretty obvious, is that yes, your wishes will come true, Putin will become the president, like anyone unfortunately doubted. But at the same time, all of us at least can extract one good thing from the video, is that Christmas and Santa Claus is real and he can make your wishes come true. Unfortunately, sometimes not the best ones. And so yes, now, as always, let's get serious and talk about both countries, Russia and Ukraine, exchanging mass attacks after Ukraine targeted a Russian landing ship in Novocherkassk. Then we're gonna talk about Russians removing their air defense systems from a very important position, and in the end we'll talk about Putin selecting a new target and summary of 2023 goals for 2024. And so yes, if you remember, last week Ukrainians were able to destroy one of the biggest Russian landing ships, called Novocherkassk, located in Feodosia, Crimea, and at this very moment the total toll of the Russian losses equals to 74 sailors. And this landing ship was obviously a legitimate military target. So that is why in response to that, Russia started attacking the entire territory of Ukraine, as we talked in our Saturday video, and this was one of the biggest missile and drone attack that Russia did so far. In response to that, Ukrainians were attacking the bordering city of Russia called Belgorod, and then Russians responded once again by attacking a hotel in Kharkiv, a museum and a university in Lviv, and a residential area in Sumy. As you can see, not a single place I just mentioned, not a single infrastructure I just talked about is a military target. And guess what? According to the Ministry of Defense of Russia, speaking specifically about that attack against hotel in Kharkiv, they mentioned that as a result of this, they were able to destroy 2 HIMARS systems of Ukrainians. And also, why they targeted this hotel? It is because there was a big, huge meeting with the Ukrainian military commandment, and every single one of them was exactly the person who was planning the attack against Belgorod. How extremely convenient, right? Besides that, another, unfortunately, residential building has been severely damaged in Odessa. And just overall, whenever the whole world was celebrating the new year, Russians were attacking Ukraine. And Ukrainians, in the night of 31st December, 1st January, were able to intercept 87 out of 90 Shahid drones. So, as you can see, Ukrainian air defense is pretty good, at least in intercepting drones and regular missiles, even though it is still lacking the efficiency against ballistic and hypersonic missiles. And another thing that Ukrainians are doing to prepare themselves against potential Russian attacks in the future is that they're heavily mining the north of their country. And as of right now, reportedly approximately 500,000 mines are planted along the northern border. And so yes, now as promised, let me give you an extremely quick update from the east, and then we'll also talk about Russians withdrawing their air defense systems from an extremely and strategically important location. But first of all, before we begin, guys, we have a saying in Russian. The way you meet a new year, this is the way you're gonna spend it. So guys, if you can help me here, as always, can you simply like this video and subscribe to my channel? You are doing this already all the time, so I'm just asking you to do this again, if you don't mind, because this does help the channel a lot. So let's keep growing in 2024, just like we did in 2023. Let's do it together. And I also have a present for you, because this year I will try my best to upload way more footage on my Patreon. Such as, for example, last week alone I uploaded 343 photos and videos, the ones which unfortunately I will never be able to show on YouTube. And so, if you already are a member, please enjoy these new benefits. But if you want to give me the biggest New Year present, please consider checking and subscribing to my Patreon as well. Because in addition to hundreds of weekly extra photos and videos, you will be also getting early access to fully uncensored episodes of The Russian Dude. The link to my Patreon is down below. Thank you so much, everyone, and now let's get back to the video. And so yes, now let's go to the east, and first stop brings us to Kupiansk, specifically to this settlement Yakhinya, where to the west of it Russians tried to advance, but Ukrainians were able to stop this armored convoy and destroy at least 2 Russian tanks and several infantry fighting vehicles, obviously with the infantry. Then we go a little bit to the east, to this settlement called Verkhnya Duvanka, where Ukrainian HIMARS was able to destroy a rocket-firing position of Russians. Going down to Bakhmut area, specifically to another city called Kurdyumivka, Ukrainians were able to destroy an advancing assault group of Russians next to this town. And ultimately, as we go even more to the south, Ukrainians were able to destroy another assault group of Russians along with their tank next to Stepove. And speaking about Avdiivka itself, you probably heard that last week President Zelensky was able to visit this city. He even released us this video. I mean, imagine the president going to the heaviest, to the most intense combat zone in his country. This is truly inspiring. And most likely, as a result of this visit, Ukrainians were able to gain a little bit momentum and their spirits were lifted, because in another attack of Russians, which was advancing to the north of Vadyane, Ukrainians were able to stop them completely, and more than at least 27 pieces of military equipment has been destroyed as a result of this failed offensive. But potentially the most important thing that happened along the front lines recently is that, according to the British intelligence report, Russians withdrew its air defense systems from the Baltic Sea coastline located in Kaliningrad, and they brought them to the regular front lines located across Ukraine. And obviously, without a doubt, Kaliningrad, as you can see right here, is pretty much surrounded by NATO countries. And if Russians are able to accept the risk of withdrawing the air defense from there, it means that the situation on the actual front lines is pretty desperate for them, to say the least. And potentially one of the biggest questions that you might have is, why would they do it? And well, guys, you might have an answer after you will hear what I'm about to say next, so please keep watching. And so yes, to begin with, Putin recently visited one of the military hospitals named after Vishnevsky, and he made some very interesting statements. And the first one, probably the most intriguing one, is that he said that Ukraine is not an enemy. He is saying that yes, Russia does want to end this conflict as soon as possible, it is that Ukrainians are the ones who are not willing to negotiate. But because Ukraine is not the real enemy here, it is actually the West which dictates Ukraine what they need to do, and it is pretty much the Western countries, including the US and NATO, the alliance NATO obviously, they are the ones fighting against Russia with the hands of Ukrainians. He is basically saying that West collectively tries to scare Russia, but Russia at this point is so dominant and so fearless, it is not afraid of anyone. And that he also, Putin mentioned, I would say, another ridiculous statement, that Russia, not a single time in the history of this war there was a direct attack by Russia against a civilian object in Ukraine, and literally hundreds of them happened over the last week. So I don't know, he lives in the different universe, I'm assuming. And then he concluded that it is Ukraine which destroyed itself. That is why whenever we see videos from Bakhmut, Avdiivka, Marinka and cities like this, whenever we see the ruins, he basically said that it is Ukrainians who are destroying their own cities, and Russians are in Ukraine trying to stop this. So as you can see, Putin decided to start this new year by changing his narrative, what basically means that this time Ukraine is no longer an enemy of Russia. Now Russia is fighting against the West, and now Russia is targeting NATO. Exactly what the Western military experts and also Zelensky and the highest military commandment of Ukraine was warning us for the last 2 years, and nobody wanted to believe this. And now we can see that the narrative is slowly changing. Majority of people will still not believe it, but propaganda takes time. And in the worst case scenario, according to the Institute for the Study of War, most likely, in case Russia is successful in this war, they will install their military bases in Lviv, right next to the border with the NATO. And then in this case, the US and other alliance countries, they will already have to bring their soldiers closer to the territory of Russia and be more engaged in this new upcoming conflict. And as you can see from these two pictures, these are just approximate, assumed positions where Russians will be installing their air defense systems, which pretty much shows that the entire border of Russia, including theoretically occupied Ukraine, it will be covered by the Russian air defense, and Russians will be able to start actively threatening NATO without being afraid from the NATO's response. And long story short, the Institute for the Study of War report concludes that now this is the main and the biggest reason and motivation for the US and NATO to continue supporting Ukraine, because Ukraine now serves as the main defense, as the wall between Russia and NATO. And if the US and NATO does not want to fight against Russia directly, they just have to keep supporting Ukraine as much as possible. And some other Western military experts, relying on this report by the Institute for the Study of War and other similar reports, they claim that Russia might potentially heavily escalate the situation in 2024 so that they can actively start threatening NATO in approximately 24-25, whenever America will have its new presidential elections and whenever potentially a new president will just be getting used to his role. So maybe at that time America will not be as confident, and this is, according to them, is the best potential time for Putin to attack. And ultimately, guys, let's end this video with extremely important statistics that you just cannot miss. We're gonna talk right now about the summer of 2023 in just literally 1-2 minutes and the goals for 2024. And so yes, first of all, Russia has a tradition that for every New Year celebration, Putin congratulates its citizens and he talks about results and goals. This time he was not talking with the background of soldiers of the special military operation, commonly known as war. He was routinely in the background with Kremlin. As you can see, he was trying to not to talk that much about war because presidential elections are coming and he needs to show that there is a stability inside the country. But obviously he did mention that soldiers are heroes, we will win, and Russia is the greatest country in the world. A little bit more aggressive congratulations came from Dmitry Medvedev. He said that usually people, whenever they're meeting, celebrating New Year, they spend this time with the dearest people they have, relatives and friends, but this time they should, at least in their minds, spend it with the soldiers of the Russian army, the ones who protect their freedom. And in the end, Medvedev said that this time, instead of me wishing you health, love and prosperity, I mean, it's not that like that these things matter. He said that let me wish to defeat neo-fascists in Ukraine. Then it was Sergei Shoigu who is saying that 2022 proved the world that the Russian army is absolutely undefeatable. This is the strongest army in the world, and he was wishing Russian soldiers fighting in distant lands to be brave, to be thinking about the mother. Wait a second, did he just say to wish soldiers fighting in distant lands? Isn't Russia saying that Kherson, Zaporozhye, Donbass, Crimea, aren't they saying that this is a part of Russia now, that these are Russian territories? So that's pretty interesting that he has said that soldiers are fighting far away. Kinda Freud mistake. Okay, so yes. On the other side of the conflict, Zelensky also was speaking to his nation, and he prioritized the main goal of 2024 is to completely isolate and endanger Crimea. Such as, for example, he referred to Taurus missiles, which according to him will be able to destroy the Crimean bridge worth of approximately $4 billion, and this is the main logistics and supply artery for Russians in the south of Ukraine, which is an extremely important military target. He then unfortunately said that Ukraine will have to do more mobilization and mobilize more people because we need to protect our land. There is no somebody who will do it for you. We, Ukrainians, we are the ones who need to do it. And then he also said that Ukrainians will be prioritizing as well, liberating currently occupied territories. And besides that, in case, just in case, the support from the West will stop, Ukraine does have a plan B. And such as, for example, Ukraine, instead of getting the weapons from abroad, they can get the licenses to produce the very same weapons on their own territory. Besides that, in 2023, Ukraine was drastically improving its air defense system, which is now a so-called hybrid air defense system. And as a result of this, in 2023, Ukrainians were able to intercept 45 Russian military planes, bringing the total number of Russian military planes which were intercepted since the beginning of the war to 329. In addition to that, Ukrainians were able to intercept 1,709 Russian missiles and 3,095 Shahed drones. And in total, more than 250,000 Russian soldiers, 3,000 tanks, 5,000 self-propelled guns, 4,000 artillery systems, and 8 ships have been destroyed also in 2023 alone. And unfortunately, as you can see from this map, this year was not as liberating as the previous one, with Ukrainians being able to liberate only 523 square kilometers, highlighted in yellow color, and Russians capturing 587 square kilometers, highlighted in blue. But in the end, every war is extremely cyclical. Sometimes it is one country which is successful, then it is another one, then the offensive activities stop completely. But eventually one country will start dominating once again, and usually it is good that beats evil. So for this reason, guys, let's not hope, let's have a very bright hopes for 2024, and let's wish Ukrainians a very speedy recovery and victory. Thank you so much once again, patrons, for your support, and see you tomorrow.